everybody. Welcome back to Popcorn for Dinner. This is Jeff.
This is Kelly.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
We're going to release this early this week to just put it out on Thanksgiving because it just makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we're doing a Thanksgiving movie. We're doing the Thanksgiving movie because there aren't Thanksgiving movies. I don't care what people say. Thanksgiving is not a Thanksgiving movie. It just does not count. Some movies might have bits of Thanksgiving in it or be set like around Thanksgiving technically, but they're not as central a plot point. Which I mean, it's not like it's that. But,
wasn't the other one Freebirds?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The animated movie about turkeys going back in time to take turkeys off the Thanksgiving menu, which is, I guess that's as like literal of having Thanksgiving the movie being about Thanksgiving, like literally,
not about the holiday that it became,
but about
the origin. Of
it. The actual thing. So yeah, we watched me for the 7 millionth time, Kelly for the first. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, the John Hughes, classic, really. Obviously, like I said, I've watched it a billion times over the years. So for you, I guess my sort of first question would be, like, I know that you've seen Cool Runnings, and I'm sure that you've seen like Home Alone that John Candy has a little part in. I know Uncle Buck, Blues Brothers. So for John Candy, this is not your first time watching a movie with him as like the lead.
Right.
What about Steve Martin?
Steve Martin, I have seen Father of the Bride.
Okay.
And Bringing Down the House with Queen Latifah. Okay.
Yeah, two very different eras of Steve Martin.
Exactly.
Looks exactly the same, but two different eras.
He aged very well.
I mean, he aged immediately and then stayed that age forever.
So I had seen, and I enjoy Steve Martin. I enjoy John Candy. I did not enjoy this movie.
Really?
Yeah, I'm going to piss a lot of people off, I know. Yeah. I was kind of bored. Like one of my notes is at the end note to sum it all up was overall boring and predictable. Like I understand the love behind it and why everyone adores it. It just wasn't for me. I did enjoy all of the random ass cameos that there were. Yeah. Like jotted down a few of them, like Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
That was fun. And then Ben Stein later on. The woman from
Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yes.
Yeah, Edie Clerg or something like that. I forget what her name is. Yeah, it was the rental.
Yeah, the rental
clerk lady.
Yeah. I feel like I'm missing someone.
I mean, I don't know how much you know Michael McKean, but he was the state trooper at the end that pulls him over.
I figured that was someone.
Yeah, he's
I just couldn't.
Spinal Tap and a whole bunch of those.
It's been a long time since I've seen Spinal Tap.
Yeah. But like, boring in what way? Like the story is boring, or the jokes are boring, or
the fact that it's about commuting. Like, you're in a plane, you're in a bus, or you're on a train, then you're on a bus, and then you're in a taxi, and you're in the back of, like, it's just a lot of just them sitting around. And like, yeah, they're great, but like there's only so much of that can be entertaining.
Yeah, I just straight up disagree 100%. Like, not like I was waiting, I was trying to hear it out. I was trying to be like, let's see where this is going. But like,
just nope.
This movie is literally like the journey is the friends we made along the way made into a movie. Like, it's not the cars and the trains.
John Candy is just so annoying. Like, I know that's his character, and he plays it really well because he's just so annoying. The sinus clearing, oh my God, I would have smacked him in the face.
Exactly.
Like, he took his shoes off on a plane. Like, that's not okay.
I mean, again, I don't know.
Actually,
I don't know
no. The shoes I can, if you take your shoes off and keep your feet underneath. But he took his socks off then, and he was like swinging his socks around. Like you find it so hysterical, and I'm just sitting there like
It's
being
just-
annoyed for Steve Martin.
Yeah.
Not Steve Martin.
Well, yeah, it's Steve Martin.
Yeah, Steve Martin. Sorry.
But like it's it's Steve Martin's reactions to all those things that makes it like it has to be so horrible so that his reactions to it, like he can do his Steve Martin bit and just like be over the top uptight about it and just like, oh my god, his outburst on him when they're sleeping, when he's clearing his
Yeah.
sinuses and he jumps up and he starts going. It's like I think the reason it's so funny is because it's so earned. Like he has completely earned this outburst from Neil Page and just freaking out on him, and everything he says is 100% true. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that. It's
I agree with that.
yeah. I don't know. I just obviously I would never want to like hang out with Del Griffith. I would never want to be stuck on a plane or train or automobile with him.
When Neil Page goes to take a shower,
Mm-hmm.
how did he not notice the bathroom was a mess when he got in the shower? Or did that happen while he was in the shower? And did he not notice that all of this commotion, because the commotion had to have been made.
John Candy's not a commotionless man.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Especially with the mayhem that was left behind.
Yeah. I mean,
Come on. You can't get pissed when you get out of the shower if it looks like that when you get in.
yeah.
Like, also completely forgot you could just smoke anywhere in the 80s.
Oh yeah. whenever he felt like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a few like 80s era things that I thought was so funny, like the fact that he has to stop at payphones all the
Mhm.
time to try to call home
Yeah.
and like never getting through or whatever. It's like not even in the era of pager,
Mhm.
let alone text messages or anything.
Yeah.
The bit towards the end when he gives his watch to the
Mhm.
hotel guy, and then he sits down in the hotel room and looks at his wrist to check the time and sees that his watch isn't there, and it's like
Yeah.
nobody would. I mean, obviously you'd probably still care if your fancy
Right.
watch was gone, but it wouldn't be like, no, I can't tell the time.
Yeah.
Like, because my watch is gone. It's like that doesn't happen anymore. And it is the 80s, so you did have to get at least. I was glad it was only one. Like going back and looking at it, I was like, all right, we'll see how kind of not with the current times the jokes and things are. And I
Mhm.
was glad that there was really just the one like gay panic joke
Yeah.
of like, we were in bed together and my hand's touching your butt and you're holding my hand and you kiss
Yeah.
my ear, like, oh, we got to be manly men.
Yeah.
Oh, talk about the
The
Bears.
Bears.
Hell of a team, hell of a team. Like, I love that bit,
You're
but
gonna
at
go
the
all the
same
way
time,
this year.
yeah, I was just reading about that. It was like technically because he says like, oh, did you catch that Bears game last week? Oh yeah, hell of a team, hell of a team. Somebody went back and looked and like checked it out. Like, well, Thanksgiving that year was this day, so the last game that they would have been able to watch was this game that they won 30-10. So they
Mhm.
did look really good.
Yeah. It was a
And,
hell of a game.
Yeah, and they went to the divisional round in the playoffs. They didn't go all the way though.
Mm.
So it's like, but that was pretty good. But yeah, I was glad there was only really the one in terms of like really bad, like
Yeah.
of the times, like sexuality or other weird jokes,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like even like later, or they make a joke in Brooklyn Nine-Nine about it, Ace Ventura. And they're like, oh, yeah, it's a really good movie. And it only becomes overtly transphobic at the end. Or it's like, oh, God, yeah. Oh. So, like, I was afraid there was going to be more, like, stuff that I didn't really remember.
Mhm.
Like, oh, is there a bit? But it's like, nah, it's really more somewhat harmless hijinks as opposed
Yeah.
to, like,
Except for destroying a fucking hotel room.
I completely
Motel
forgot they did that. Like, I completely forgot that they back into it before they leave. I was like, holy crap. Oh, man. I mean, I guess, they'll get away with it because they didn't put any credit cards down.
Yeah. But I had that thought too. Like, oh,
Yeah.
that is convenient of carrying $700 in cash as a normal
80s.
thing. I know.
don't know. Businessman 80s.
Yeah. That blew my mind. Like $700 in cash in your wallet
Yeah. Just
because
hanging.
I mean, I guess if you're traveling, like you'll probably have multiple expenses along the way.
Yeah, I'd
and
assume.
80s, so cash is more prevalent.
Yeah. I will say this movie definitely made me never want to like grow up and have to commute and shit for work. Like that whole opening sequence of like trying to find a taxi to get from one place, it was just like, oh my God, this seems like a nightmare.
Yeah.
This is horrible. Why would anybody do this? I was always
New York.
I was always very grateful that it's like we could like as a family or whoever could like drive into the city and then drive our own way back with our own vehicle like we did. It's not like it's like, oh no, we don't have a car. We just take taxis and buses and shit everywhere. It's like, that seems horrible.
Yeah.
People suck. I don't want to be near them all the time.
Also, is there not a subway near where he's at? And does it not go to the airport? Because, like, that's...
I mean, I have no clue how the New York City subway works.
I don't either, so...
Yeah, it seems odd that a taxi is his only form to get to the airport, but at the same time, I have no way of disproving that. So it's like, I will say, talking about taxis, easily one of my favorite jokes in the history of movies is in this movie, and it involves the taxi. Not when he's chasing after the taxi, not when he buys the taxi from that jackass who's like, any man who'd pay $50 for a taxi would certainly pay $75. Like, what an asshole. Not that part, but it's when Steve Martin is looking at John Candy in the terminal at the airport, and he's trying to place where he sees him. And then it literally is him behind a taxi door in the airport terminal doing that shocked face. Where he just goes like, oh my God. That fucking kills me every time. Just the fact that it uses, like, it's not just a flashback to the shot. It's in the scene is him behind a door that's just there. I loved it. I love that.
That was a good little bit. It's like 6 hours max to St. Louis from Chicago.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense anyway, because they wind up passing a Wisconsin state trooper on their way back to Chicago from St. Louis. So it's all sorts of goofy. I didn't even
realize that it was a Wisconsin state trooper.
Yeah.
That they know Chicago. Like, why is it geographically incorrect?
See, the issue is that there's a 3-hour cut of this movie that nobody has ever seen. Okay. Because John Hughes just went fucking ballistic when he was filming this. And he wrote a gigantic screenplay, and he shot like 600 million feet of film or something crazy. Like, I don't know, some crazy amount of film shooting it. And when they put it together the first time, it was like 3 hours plus. And it was like, well, it needs to get cut down to something manageable. And so out came this like 92, 93 minute long movie. So there's surely some stuff that has been lost that would connect a few of these sequences that seem a little more disjointed. Obviously not saying like, and that makes it okay. Yeah. But it's just like, it's like, this is what they could get out of it. Okay. Essentially, this was what they were able to put together to make a coherent 90-minute movie out of a 3-hour long movie. Like, oh shit. We have to somehow compress this.
Yeah. I don't think I would have been able to watch 3 hours of this. Like, there are definitely movies. There are movies that I can watch 3 hours of, no problem. I don't think that this would be one. Because, again, it's just like, I commuted to Chicago for like a couple years. That's enough.
I mean, I took trains for school too and all that. Like, I commuted plenty.
I know. But I don't need to watch a movie.
It baffles me, because it seems like more like you should like relate to the movie and be like, yeah, it sucks, right? Because that's what the movie's saying. It's not like the movie's saying like, isn't this great? Isn't this so much fun? Like, it's literally like a trip from hell. You think you'd be like, yep, I get it, yep.
No, I get it. I don't want to relive that part of my life.
You don't have to. You live their life in this sequence.
That's not much better. I will say my favorite scene of the movie was when they were getting drunk in the like second motel room.
That was when I just wrote love their hotel room sleepover. Like later in the movie, they did seem like
I feel like I'm at camp.
Yeah, and that moment of Candy like laughing his way into the bathroom and then opening the door just to peek out and laugh some more and then close it again is peak John Candy. You can only
Mm.
imagine that he did that. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't like, oh, and then you open it again. He was just like, wait, and just did it.
That scene was fantastic.
And I gotta say, like, obviously it's not a case of that you don't understand John Candy. It's like you've seen plenty of
Mhm.
John Candy. It's not like it's like this is something new that you have to like
Yeah.
get used to, but it's just like something about John Candy makes that role work for me so much, because it's like no matter how sucky he is as like a roommate, riding companion, all of that, he just has this underlying sweetness to it where you know it's not malicious. You know what I mean? It's like it's one of those people where it's like you're being so annoying, but oh my god, you're just trying to be nice, or you're just
Yeah.
trying to be friendly, or you just want a friend or something like that. So it's like Steve Martin is completely justified throughout the movie giving him all of the shit that he gives. You know what I mean? It's like there's
Yeah.
not really a point. I feel like when they do the first argument in the first hotel room,
Mhm.
and he like starts tearing into him, it does feel at a certain point, like I couldn't tell you the exact line, but there's a point in that where I wrote down like, holy shit, Neil is like really digging in. Like I completely understand being like upset.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, fucking this, fucking that, fucking you're clearing your sinuses. Like it's so annoying. But then at a certain point, it just felt like he was going too far,
Mhm.
because he started almost like kind of repeating himself and just like digging in at him as like a person and like a human being.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, as it's completely true, the whole like, you know, not everything is an anecdote. You have to discriminate,
Mhm.
you know, and it's like, okay, there you go. You got your point across with that. But then later he's like, next time you tell a story, here's a tip. Have a point. It makes it so much more interesting for the listener. And it's just, he really starts digging into him. And then he has that little, you know, speech about like, I like me. My wife likes me and all that.
Yeah.
And you know, that obviously is meant to make you feel for him a little bit. But most of the shit he gives John Candy in the movie is completely warranted. Other than that first one, especially because he then like crawls back into bed with him
Yeah.
and like just like, oh, okay. And it's like you feel bad, but you're not going to say anything about it, like that you may have overstepped a bound there a little bit, Neil. But it's like, okay, whatever. You don't really hold it against him either, though. It's not like by the next scene you're like, oh, you know what? That Steve Martin's a jerk for saying that. It's like, nah, it was coming.
Yeah. It was fully warranted.
Yeah. And I feel like Steve Martin's character feels it as well, where it's like as annoying and as terrible as he is, like, you know, like when the train breaks down and he goes and he helps him picking up the case, because he's just like dragging his steamer trunk behind him.
I was fully expecting that to pop open because they were carrying it upside down. I was like, that's like, come on, just let it happen. Let's go.
You know, but I think I really felt it by the end there. Like, I don't know. It did feel earned to me that he invites him into that second hotel room.
Yeah.
When it's like, I'm getting my room, you can get your own room if you want it. And then kind of realizing like, I'm literally leaving a man sitting out in a car with no cover in the snow in the winter.
No cover, no windows.
Yeah. And I think what gets to me about that whole sequence and John Candy's character in general is that he doesn't like fight it. It's not like Steve Martin goes like, I'm getting my own room, you get your own room. And then John Candy, you know, like freaks out on him like, oh, you ungrateful jerk, blah, blah, blah. You should let me in, blah. He's just like, yeah, well, I did it again. That whole speech in the car about like, I've done it again. I find someone and I push him away and I'm a big jerk about it and all that. And he's just sitting there and he just accepts it. And it's so sad. And so seeing him invite him back in, I think is what makes that second hotel room scene so great, is that it's like they've kind of both realized like, yeah, we've both sucked. Especially towards each other this whole trip, but we probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for either of us. You know, it's like we'd be stuck somewhere. So that works for me, and I think that's one of the things. Like if Dell's annoying, you know, habits and things are too annoying for you, you're not necessarily going to feel it. But if like, you know, if you take the ride that the movie is like trying to aim you towards, then I think it feels a little more Like I guess in defense of the term boring is what I'm getting at, is like if you know, if you don't like him and you're annoyed by him and you're just like and you're kind of out, then it's like, well, okay, then you're not, then just, you know, it's not
Mhm.
your ride then, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Then you're just like, all right, whatever. So you're not necessarily, I don't know. I'm trying to find a way to put it that doesn't sound like a jerk. I can see why it would be boring if you don't care.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, that just sounds
Like,
mean.
no, I get it. And I am not offended.
Right.
um and it's not that I like don't care. Like it's it's more like the way that you were saying, like John Candy isn't really meaning to be the most obnoxious person.
Right. He's not like a
He's
proud asshole or anything.
right. But that almost makes it worse for me because it's like I feel bad about being angry because he doesn't mean it. Like, it like it's like customer service flashback. Like,
Mhm.
they didn't mean to sound like a bitch, but that was a really bitchy thing to say. So it just I feel bad for disliking him because, like I said, like he doesn't mean to be a like leech
Uh-huh.
and a mooch, and
Uh-huh.
he just is.
Right.
So I don't not care. I just don't care as much as everyone else does.
Gotcha.
So that's why I did enjoy the whole little bit of him sitting in the car and like talking to Marie, right?
I think that was her name. I forget.
And then, getting invited in and that whole little scene of them drinking and saying where they're going with the drink they're having.
Yeah, yeah. It does the Jamaican accent
Yeah.
like 5 years before Cool Runnings.
I did enjoy that, and I did get the heartwarming, of Steve Martin looking out the window and then telling him that he's going to freeze out there, and the
Mhm.
look that John Candy gets. Like that moment is like that's my favorite little part of the movie.
Mhm.
Other than that,
I mean, what about
it's not like the rest of the movie was complete garbage and I
uh-huh.
hated every moment of it.
Uh-huh.
It didn't keep me as enthralled as I had hoped.
I just don't know, like watching it again, I was just kept noting about how every scene at least has a little bit of something pushing it into the next one, and is just like has a good gag or two or whatever in it to like keep it flowing so like quickly, and just like and then they're here and then they're there and then it moves on this, and just felt like a nice, like briskly paced funny movie. I don't know, it
Mhm.
just felt like it was the exact opposite description of what you said, like.
I guess the gags just didn't go over as well with me. Now, knowing that there's a 3-hour cut of the movie, I cut it a little bit more slack. But the
Mm.
fact that they're driving from St. Louis to Chicago and they have to switch drivers like 3 times, at least twice, because like it starts off with John Candy driving because he almost hit Steve Martin. And then for a little bit, it was Steve Martin driving because then John Candy was fucking with the seat.
Yeah.
Which what kind of
I love,
fucking
dude,
80s
that is,
seats, the
I love that.
noises it was
I
making.
mean, that's clearly just like movie servo
Right.
noises.
It just
But dude,
that
that
was
that whole seat
obnoxious.
bit was so fucking great. Exact opposite word of what you said. Like that, I can't get over that one shot when, like, cause he's going forward and backward and fucking with it, and Steve Martin keeps telling him about it. And then when it somehow shifts horizontally and it shoves John Candy into Steve Martin's
Yeah.
shoulder. Oh my god. It's like it's the like tiny little absurd moments like that just flavor it so well. Like there's so much of this movie that is just sort of like mundane, like doesn't this suck
Hmm.
life stuff, but then there's just enough of that like wait what moment kicked in like right in the midst of it that I think is great. 'Cause it's like a joke just of someone like, yeah, he messed with the seat and he broke it is one thing, but the fact that it's like it's a super 80s like
Hmm.
joke of it going
Yeah.
like so haywire that it does things that it can't possibly do. But it's like that's just part of the charm of the movie. Like the movie wouldn't be the movie that it is if it wasn't all 80s. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like it can't.
Maybe that's where I'm missing it. Maybe I just don't appreciate the 80s as much as everyone else.
Maybe it's like I don't feel like that movie. I mean, maybe you could get away with a movie like that in the 90s. Like I don't think a joke like that would fly in a movie like in the 2000s or 2010 or any of that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's like they're so much more grounded now.
Yeah.
Where it's like unless the movie is going like full bore weird absurdism, then you'll never get a joke like that.
Yeah.
But in the 80s, it seemed like they had a pretty fast and loose way of playing with that kind of joke where it's like, this movie's pretty realistic all the way. It's like, but then the seat just like flies over to the side. Really, it just like shifts horizontally. Like, yeah, that's ridiculous. Put it in there. Or they're fucking between the trucks and they're skeletons for a second. And then Candy is the devil for a moment. And like, it's so absurded out there that it's just like, I can't not love it. It's got such charm to it.
I had a few notes about that whole driving scene. Like, how did Steve Martin not wake up when the car is like swerving all over the road?
I thought I didn't realize how, for one, I forgot like how many times it spins, but also I forgot that John Candy is like screaming the entire time and then he wakes up. But it's like, again, it's like, I hate to just like constantly be like pointing up to it, but it just feels like 80s.
Yeah.
Like 80s. It's an 80s movie. It's a John Hughes movie. It's like he's gonna make it funny, and he don't give a shit if it, like, you know what I mean. It's like the old story that what the fuck movie was it? It's like the joke about Armageddon. It's not really a joke, but that Ben Affleck said to Michael Bay, he was like, wouldn't it be easier for them to train astronauts to drill than to train drillers to be astronauts? And Michael Bay was like, shut the fuck up. And that's the answer. That's what it feels like so much. You know what I mean? Like if anybody in this, writing it or reading it or doing anything about this script, if they were to say to John Hughes, but wouldn't he have woken up already before this thing started? And he'd be like, how about you fuck yourself? You know what I mean? Like, he would just be like, this is the joke. That's what he wakes up and then he's like, what happened? Like, oh, almost hit a deer. It's like it has to, it's crazy. And it has these wild things. It's very much like a, fucking like a Lampoon's movie, you know what I mean? Like one of the vacation movies or something where it's like crazy, weird, outlandish shit happens, even though it's kind of supposed to just be, it's like, it's just a family on a road trip, but zany shit happens all the time. Like that's that era of comedy. That is what they were doing all the time. But I do understand like that if it's not really part of, if it's not part of your palate already, then it's probably hard to like really hone in on like the flavor of it, of just being like, it's like, this seems kind of weird. Anybody else? And it's like, oh, no, that's the point. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
The 80s might be hit or miss with comedies for me.
No.
Oh my God. I did right. When they were driving into Chicago in the friggin' semi or whatever. Like Chicago looks so tiny. Like the fact that that's Chicago from like 30 years ago now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there's so many more giant buildings. That is like, it looks so little.
It's like a teenage Chicago.
It's cute little Chicago.
Also, quick thing. I've never really looked into it ever, but it seems like something that they use in movies all the time. That the whole like magic fingers bed, you put the thing. Did those really exist? I feel like I've never seen even like the remnants of that in like a really old motel where it might have been back in the day. It seems like if they ever existed, they've been wiped clean of the earth.
Yeah, that
seems like something I've only seen in like movies or cartoons or TV shows.
Yeah,
never in real life ever.
Like anvils.
Yeah, maybe I just don't go to seedy motels that include them, which is like, hey, cool.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it just feels like a made up thing for.
It really seems like it could be either one. Like either it's just.
Only in the seediest places, or never existed ever.
Yeah.
Did you notice the kid, Steve Martin's son?
Yes, he was later on Boy Meets World.
Okay, I was gonna say he was in Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, I never really watched Boy
in
Meets
between
World.
the two.
Yeah, but I've never really known that. Like he was just a little kid,
Yeah.
and I never really registered that it was the same kid. So watching it again, I was like, "Oh, holy shit! It's the kid from." I almost said Jumanji, but no, it's the kid from Mrs. Doubtfire. Wrong Robin Williams movie. Also, did you catch that Steve Martin's daughter was named Marty? Sounded like he was
Yeah.
pronouncing it very specifically with a T,
Yeah.
and I was like, "What? What is her name then? Martha? Marta? Why would he call her Marty?"
Yeah. I don't know.
It seemed like a really weird name for a girl, especially in the
I-
80s.
Yeah. Especially if it's just make it Martha at that part. At
Yeah,
that
it really
point.
seemed odd.
Like
Oh, also, in terms, you keep talking about, like you just won't shut up about the cameos. But did you recognize Martin Ferrero?
Remind me who that is?
He was the clerk who took the watch at that second hotel. The
Okay.
skeevy guy behind the counter. That's Gennaro from Jurassic Park, the lawyer.
Did not place that.
Yep. And in terms, I mean, I guess, because literally, your decision to not like this movie has ruined so many of my notes, because it was really just supposed to be like, hey, remember this funny part, and then you're supposed to say, yeah,
You remember that time?
yeah. Sorry, I just keep reading it and laughing, and I guess I'll just do that by myself forever. But when it comes to like the ending there, I know at that point, I'm sure you were just done with Del Griffith and all of that.
Mhm.
But even when I was too young to really like care about it all that much, it still struck me, that sort of twist ending. It's like
That his wife is
that he just doesn't have a home at all.
okay.
Like he's a homeless widower. And so it's just like, that was a huge shock as a kid, watching it again, sort of, picking up on the clues ahead of time, because, I know it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you sort of see that coming? Did it seem obvious to you? Because obviously I have no way to know if it seems obvious, because I know it. So it's like, yeah. But
I assumed his wife was dead when he was talking to her in the car at that second hotel.
mhm.
I wasn't surprised by the homelessness. I didn't I didn't like
He
guess
seemed
it.
homeless to me.
No, I well traveled, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Like he seemed more like a nomad,
Yeah.
and like when he said like that he hadn't been home in years,
Mhm.
like that seemed like a complete possibility. Like all he does is travel.
Mhm.
Like so it didn't entirely surprise me.
While I was watching it, it made me think about like Thanksgiving movies and the fact that there really aren't any.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the conclusion I sort of came to was that like the whole point of Thanksgiving is kind of like, be happy and be like grateful, and
Yeah.
be with people that you love, and blah blah blah, spirit of Christmas or spirit of Thanksgiving, whatever. And you pretty much get that same kind of stuff in a Christmas movie. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like they're not that
But it's
different.
all bright and colorful. And
Exactly.
you're buying presents. And
Yeah.
it's snowing. And
You can get like, I mean, you really just put them up against each other, and it's like turkey, cornucopia, pilgrim hat versus Santa Claus, Christmas tree, snow, all that kind of shit. And
stars,
it's just like,
lights.
yeah, it's like, what looks better? What, you know what I mean? You get songs if you do a Christmas movie, you know what I mean? Like, you can use a whole bunch of fucking songs and shit. There's
we need
a whole
Bob's Burgers Thanksgiving movie.
yeah, to do a Thanksgiving song and make an actual one. Because I was thinking about like, there's that quick scene where it cuts back to that like pageant that his kid is in, and they're like singing a Thanksgiving song, and I was like, what the fuck is this?
Yes.
When has there ever been a Thanksgiving song?
I was confused by that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could have looked into like what it is. I'm sure there's like one out there somewhere, but if you do a Christmas movie, you get so many songs. You can use all sorts of music. There's this whole vibe around the holiday that just like is more cinematic than Thanksgiving. So it's like, I get it. But that's kind of why I feel like it works and why I really like it for this movie is like, it's not like Steve Martin is trying to, because, there's a little bit in the movie about him talking about like, I spend too much time away from home,
Mm-hmm.
and when his kids are at home and they hear that he called, they're like, flight's delayed. Like they know the
Mm-hmm.
routine.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit about him being sort of like a bad dad in a
At
way,
least an
kind of.
absent father.
Yeah. What's great is that they just want him. You know what I mean? It's like they
Mm-hmm.
literally they just want him at home for Thanksgiving. It's not like one of those fucking Christmas movies where it's like, oh, the dad is gonna find the right toy for the
Mm-hmm.
kid to, a real like materialistic approach to it.
Yeah.
With this and with Thanksgiving, since there's no gifts in Thanksgiving, it's literally just like just be here, just come over and be here,
Yeah.
So it kind of it helps it feel a little more meaningful.
It being focused around family, like it definitely suits the holiday
Mm-hmm.
really well. And the fact that it all comes back to him being home with his family and
Mm-hmm.
like sharing the holiday with his new friend,
Mm-hmm.
like who doesn't have a family to go home to. Like it is very wholesome and heartwarming.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit. It's not that it's necessarily more difficult to do. It's not like, oh my god, writing a Thanksgiving movie is a fucking, oh man, to try to figure that one out. But it at least doesn't leave you such like easy moments
Mm-hmm.
that Christmas movies could. Like you could only imagine if it was a Christmas movie
Yeah.
and Del Griffith comes in at the end and like at some point one of the kids like hands him a present with their name crossed off and they wrote Del on it instead, like,
Yeah.
so you have a present too, Mr. Griffith. Like a real obvious easy moment like that.
Yeah.
It's like you don't really have that because it's just Thanksgiving. It's just
It's
food
just
and hanging
food.
out. And football. I guess a good thing too is that like the rest of the world isn't Thanksgivinged out. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like if it was a Christmas movie, everywhere they go would be Christmassy.
Right.
They'd stop at a rental agency and they'd be dressed like a fucking elf, or there'd be, icicles, or there's a Santa outside or something. Everything would get completely
Yeah.
Christmasified. But when it's Thanksgiving, it's just like, what? It's just fucking Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Like there's no craziness. It's just that travel sucks and there's somewhere you got to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of the perfect putting a roadblock between your character and where they need to go. Thanksgiving is the best time to do it at because it's like everyone's traveling.
Yeah.
So travel sucks. So getting
Also-
anywhere.
And I mean, 4th of July, but then you don't have the snow as an adversary.
Yeah, it's harder to justify the flights not going
Yeah.
if it's summertime.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, storms sometimes do that, but that feels less realistic than O'Hare being closed for fucking snow because it's like, yep, there you go.
That's just a Tuesday for
Yeah.
us.
Let me guess, did a plane slide off the runway again? Our annual plane sliding off the runway? I think that's going to have to wrap it up. Popcorn for dinner this week. This is Jeff.
And Kelly.
Have yourself a happy Thanksgiving, everybody, and guess we'll see you next week.